a closed door. A small room off the main corridor, no window, a few chairs that don't match, 2 or 3 staff already sitting down when you walk in. Every signal in that setup points one way. Something has gone wrong with the person you came to see, and they've moved you somewhere quiet to say it out loud. A lot of the time, that reading is just off. The person in the bed is the same as they were an hour ago. Nothing about their treatment has changed, and the reason you're sitting in that room has nothing to do with their medical care. So if it isn't the patient's condition, the real question is, what does pull you in there? And the answer is a handful of systems inside the hospital that can call that meeting entirely on their own, none of them running out of the doctor's office. Before I walk you through them, if being able to tell while you're actually standing in that room whether the conversation is about your person's health or about money or the law or somebody else's lab results sounds worth having, then subscribing is how you keep this coming, because that's the whole job here, taking apart the corners of a hospital that talk to families in forms and statutes instead of plain sentences. Start with the one that costs money, because it's the most common by a wide margin. Your father's been in a hospital bed for 3 days, pneumonia say, an IV line, a floor, a chart, nurses in and out. You've already toured the rehab place he'll move to afterward, picked his room, and you're not worried about the bill, because of course Medicare covers it, he's in the hospital. Then someone calls and asks you to come sign a little paperwork, and when you get there you're in the small room, and they hand you one federal form, the Medicare Outpatient Observation Notice, the MOON, a form the hospital is required to hand over once someone's been kept in observation past about a day, and explain that for those 3 days, on paper, your father was never actually admitted. He was an outpatient the whole time. Observation status, in the billing language, a bed, a floor, a wristband, and underneath all of it, a classification that says the hospital was watching him, not admitting him, and that quiet little word does something specific and expensive. Medicare will only pay for a rehab or skilled nursing stay if the patient was formally admitted as an inpatient across 3 midnights in a row. Observation days don't count toward those 3. So the rehab you toured, the room you picked, the coverage isn't there because as far as the rule sees it, he was never admitted long enough to qualify. And you'll learn this in the small room, usually with a soft deadline in the air, because the bed is needed and they'd like to know where he's going now. The pressure in that is real. Families who've been through it describe being handed these liability forms with an unspoken clock on them. The bed is needed, a decision is wanted now, and signing things they don't fully follow because they're wrung out and worried, and the person across the table is calm and busy. It helps to know, before you're in it, that the small room for this kind of talk is often a repurposed supply closet or an old staff break room, mismatched chairs and all. That's a design choice as much as a decor one. A quiet sign that you've stepped out of clinical care and into the part of the hospital that runs on paperwork. Here's where it actually begins. Off the floor, away from his doctor entirely, a utilization review nurse or an outside Medicare Advantage plan auditing the chart measures his stay against a set of standardized inpatient criteria, the checklist the industry uses to decide who counts as sick enough to be admitted and decides he no longer clears the bar. That flag goes to the attending, who now has to stop being a physician for a few minutes and become the person who delivers a federal notice. That's the reason for the room. His body was the same as the day before. The thing that moved was a line in his chart. And this is not some rare edge case. Somewhere between 15 and 20% of Medicare patients lying in hospital beds are in observation status rather than a formal admission. Millions of families a year, and plenty of them never realize the person was technically an outpatient until the coverage simply doesn't appear. Of the people moving from observation toward rehab, close to a third run into an unexpected denial. That's the trap in that first room, a bed that carries all the weight of an admission and none of its coverage. Now notice what you still have in that scenario, even out the money. You can take your father home. You can make the calls, pick the plan, decide. You're poorer and more cornered, but you're in charge. Hold on to that, because the next room I want to show you takes something the money never touched. Your authority to decide anything at all. You've got the car in the loading zone and a bag of clothes on the seat. Your mother was admitted a few days ago with a bad infection, and you're here to bring her home. Except at the door there's a security liaison, and you're walked into the small room, and a physician explains that you can't sign anyone out today, and that trying to would actually put you on the wrong side of the law right now. What happened is this. somewhere in the last day, the infection tipped her into acute delirium, the sudden spinning confusion that can come with being very sick and very old in a strange place. She got combative, pulled at her lines, tried to walk out. At that point, a physician can file an emergency hold, the same category of state law that lets a hospital keep someone who's become an immediate danger to themselves. The minute that certificate is filed, the state has, for the moment, stepped into the middle of the medical decision. The part that stops families cold is legal, and it's worth understanding clearly instead of just bracing against. That healthcare proxy you signed, the durable one, the document you were told makes you the decision maker. It doesn't override this. A proxy hands you authority when your person can't speak for themselves in the ordinary way. An emergency hold is a separate track, and while it's in force, your power to discharge is suspended until a formal capacity evaluation or a hearing decides whether the hold should stand. You are still the next of kin. You are simply, for a window of time, not the one who gets to open the door. And the one useful question in that room is when the capacity evaluation is actually scheduled, because that exam or hearing is the thing that can hand your authority back, and it can land sooner than the finality in the room makes it sound. In both of those rooms, at least the meeting was about your person, their bill, their confusion, their legal status. There's a version of this where the door closes, the diagnosis is real, and the conversation still isn't about the patient. It's a Monday. You spent the weekend at the bedside, in the chair, leaning over the rail, the way anyone does when their father is sick. Sometime that morning, a routine surveillance swab comes back positive for something with a name like Candida auris, one of the drug-resistant organisms hospitals track very carefully. And this time it's the infection preventionist who runs the meeting, a hospital role most families never learned exists until they're sitting across from one. And the meeting isn't about your father's prognosis at all, it's about you. Because for 2 days, you were in that room without a gown, without an N95, before anyone knew what he was carrying. And now the whole conversation is your exposure. How to watch yourself for signs you've picked it up. How to keep from carrying it into your own house, to your own family. Sometimes that means you're the one now being told to get tested, or to follow a decolonization routine yourself. His swab came back, and suddenly it's your hands, your bathroom, your household on the checklist. This has a defined shape, a look back. When a reportable organism turns up, the facility is required to trace back through everyone who was in that room in the window before precautions started and notify them. And this is more than abstract caution. For some of these organisms, studies of the people living with a colonized patient have found that up to 15% of those household contacts end up colonized themselves. So that briefing carries a legal weight people never expect walking in. Your name landed on an exposure list the second that swab came back, and the rules say you have to be told. By now you can feel the pattern under all three. The door closing tells you almost nothing about what kind of meeting you're in. There's one more thing worth knowing before you're ever sitting in one of these rooms. Out of everything said in there, what actually becomes real afterward. Because that varies too, and by default, it doesn't tilt your way. Whatever gets discussed, one thing turns into a permanent legal document. The family meeting note the physician writes into the electronic record when it's over. Who was present, what was said, what was agreed. That note is discoverable. If anything is ever litigated, it becomes evidence, and the hospital is the one who wrote it. The recording you made on your phone of that same meeting carries none of that weight, unless the hospital formally transcribes it and pulls it into the record. The whiteboard someone scribbled on gets wiped. The reassuring thing a nurse told you in the hallway beforehand was never on the record to begin with, and then there's the layer you'll most likely never see. When something in that room brushes up against a mistake, a delay, a wrong call, an infection that spread when it shouldn't have, the hospital's own internal review of what went wrong often gets written into risk management or peer review files that, in many states, are legally shielded from ever being subpoenaed. The asymmetry there is the part I find hard to sit with. Every word you say lands in a discoverable note, while the hospital's own read of its own failure can be sealed off from you by statute, even if you recorded every second yourself. How airtight that seal is depends heavily on the state. Some protect those files completely, others let a family's attorney reach right into them. Same with who even gets to decide when relatives in the room disagree. Some states rank the next of kin by statute, spouse over adult child over sibling, and the hospital has to follow that order whether the family likes it or not. Others won't move at all until everyone consents or a court appoints someone. The useful move in any of these rooms is the same, and it's small. Slow the room down and find out which machine you're actually in. Ask, in plain words, whether this meeting is about your person's medical care, or about coverage, or about a legal status, or about someone's exposure. Because the honest answer changes everything about what you should sign, agree to, or push back on before you leave. A form about billing status does something completely different from a form about treatment, even when they hand them to you in the same breath. A hold is a legal matter you may want to make a phone call about before you accept it as settled. Ask what the form actually changes before your name is on it, and whether the answer can wait until morning. And you are allowed to say you need a minute even when the room feels like it's in a hurry. None of this is medical or legal advice, and the specifics turn hard on which state your person is being treated in. The only version that governs your family is the one their own treating doctor, and where it's a legal question, a lawyer licensed where they are can lay out for you directly. For my money, the least important looking room in the hospital is the one you most need your wits about you in.